In the past 3 years, since I started working full-time as a software engineer, I have worked for two different consulting firms. One of them was a Fortune 500 company and the other was a Big Four. I worked in consulting for 2-ish years before I moved on to an in-house tech company. So in this video, I want to share my experience of what it's like working as a software engineer in consulting versus in-house. And I want to go over a few points like how is it different working for each consulting and in-house? What are the pros and cons of each? And which one should you pick at what point in your career? So let's get to it. So right after my graduation, I started working for a Fortune 500 company in their software consulting wing. And at that time, I didn't know what it meant to be working for a consulting company versus in-house because I was a recent grad and I was figuring things out as I went. So how are things different working for an in-house versus consulting company? So for those who don't know, consulting companies usually have multiple clients, i.e. multiple projects in a variety of industries like automotive, banking, insurance, manufacturing, you name it. This is particularly interesting in the beginning because you get to know different industries which otherwise you won't have any insights to. Usually companies in these industries are huge corporates that don't have their own in-house software development team. So they try to outsource the work to one of these Fortune 500 or Big Four consulting firms. So if you know any of the Big Four or some of the Fortune 500 companies, they usually have an IT/software consulting wing where you get all these inbound projects. And if you're working for one of these consulting companies, you do have the option to work on these projects. Sometimes, depending on your capacity and the requirement of the project, you might have the option to work on multiple of this project versus one project for a specific amount of time. Few things that you don't see when you're working for a consulting company from the outside is, even when you're working for a company inside, so internally, you might have few interviews in order to get built on these projects. So even though you're working for one company, your performance and utilization is very much based on how many projects you worked on that specific year. So if you have good utilization, that means you're doing well. And in order for you to get placed on this interviews, you always have to be on your A game. Sometimes a client might ask for a specific technology and you might not know it, and you might pick up just in a matter of a few weeks or month just to go through the interview and get placed on that project so that your utilization might look good. So in consulting, if you're not actually built on a project or if you're not actually utilized on a project, they say you're on bench, very much like sports. You're on bench means you're underutilized or you're not utilized on any project and you're just using the time to upskill or trying to find a project that you can get built on. And in in-house, this is never an issue because you're hired to a company where they already have an ongoing project going on and you're just joining the team and you're working to maintain the existing platform or building new features. It's not like there's an external client who has new requirements or you need to get built or utilized on a specific project. So you always have something that you already know. This specific factor has both good and bad, which brings me to my next point. What are the pros and cons of working in consulting versus in-house? So to start with, what are the pros of working in a consulting company? In consulting, you have exposure to many different projects across a variety of industries. This is specifically good initially when you're starting your career because you get to know what you like and what you don't like, and you get to pick up new things along the way. And above all, there's nothing like having a consulting experience initially in your career to supercharge your resume. I believe what made me valuable initially in the job market, even when I was a junior developer who had less than 2 years of experience, was my consulting background. So I had experience across a variety of industries on multiple different clients, building different things and working on different technologies. And that put me in a very great place. And there is this general saying in consulting that 1 year of consulting equals approximately 3 years in an in-house development. And this is specifically true if you're working for a consulting company where they have a lot of inbound projects and you have the opportunity to actually work on these projects. I had years where I used to work on multiple different projects where for 3 months I'm built on a specific client, and next 3 months I'm working for a different client, and the rest of the year I'm working for a different project. And this is one scenario, and there were scenarios where my work across a week was split between multiple projects. So for example, there was a time when I was working for a client, they just wanted a specific component build. I was built on that project for however long that build is gonna take. So I was working for that specific project 10 hours a week, and the rest 30 hours I was built on a different project. And as soon as the feature or the component was delivered, my commitment on that project was over, and I had extra 10 hours in that week apart from the 30 hours I was billing on my second project. This is really valuable initially because you get to learn different technologies, because no two projects might have same requirements. One project might need you to know a different specific tech stack, and the other might need you to know a different technology. So you get to pick up both. And this is also comparable to changing job, because when you're working for two different projects, this also means you're working for two different clients, like we mentioned. So each client have their own processes, workflows, systems, and internal team members. So every time you're switching between projects, that also means you're switching between actual companies. So you have different login system, you have different communication channels, you have different team members, you have different workflows. And when you switch between these projects, it's almost like you're switching between jobs, but at the end of the day, you're working for one company, which is the consulting company that hired you. And in-house, none of this happens. I think it's pretty obvious, because you are hired to do a specific job, and as long as you do that job to 100% of your capability, you're good. There's no change in between on what you need to deliver, other than the roadmap of the features or things you're building. And utilization is a metric that in-house companies don't even track, because you're utilized 100% of the time. And one other good thing about consulting is you get to travel to clients. It depends if it's a good thing or bad thing, depending on if you're a person who likes to travel or not. But if you're working in consulting, you might get the opportunity to travel to clients' location to do feature releases, do a testing session, and to even meet the team. But this is very unlikely in case of in-house, because your team is always with you. But other than the conferences and other office location trips, you don't travel to clients when you're working for in-house. Now, what are the cons of working for each of these companies? In consulting, from the facts that I mentioned before, you always have to be on your A game, because just because you're hired in a consulting company doesn't mean your job is kind of secure, because your annual performance is based on these utilization numbers. And sometimes there might be scenarios where you cannot get billed on a project, not for reasons of your own. For example, there might be instances where clients needs you to speak a specific language, and you might not speak that language, so you won't get placed on that project. Or maybe some clients are looking for a specific technology which you might not know. They want someone who already has 2 or 3 years of experience on that specific technology, and you might not get billed on that project. So there are chances that you might be on the bench for a specific period of time, which might bring your utilization number down. And at the end of the year, this might affect your yearly bonus. This might affect your overall compensation, and also maybe promotion for next year, for sometimes not reasons of your own. For example, I had a situation when I was working for the Big Four consulting firm. When the war here in Europe was happening between Russia and Ukraine, the economy was not so stable, so we didn't have a lot of inbound projects at the company. Since we didn't have a lot of inbound projects, I didn't have enough projects to be billed for 40 hours. The projects that I was working on was only 10 hours, 20 hours. So I didn't have a great utilization number. But towards the end of the year, things got better. And that's when I was doing multiple projects, up to 3 projects at some point, where I was doing 10 hours on one, 20 on another, 30 on another, and that kind of compensated my utilization numbers, and then I was in a good shape. This metric is not always under your control because sometimes you don't know what language or technology a specific client needs, and you might not always know it. There might be a period where your company doesn't have any inbound projects and you might be benched. And compared to this, what's so bad about working in-house? I wouldn't say it's a bad thing. It depends how you see it. Sometimes the work in in-house companies can be quite slow because if you're going to an in-house tech company that already has a matured product, not always you're shipping new features. More or less, you might be doing maintenance unless they're building a new product or a new product line. You won't always 100% get the chance to build new projects and ship new things. Rather, you might be doing refactoring, you might be doing maintenance, you might be doing code analysis of the entire code base to find vulnerabilities and fix bugs here and there. Meaning the work won't be as exciting as consulting sometimes, because in consulting, when you're getting billed for 3 months or 2 months on a project, they're bringing you on for a specific thing or a specific feature, specific implementation. That 2 month sprint or 3 month sprint can get really exciting compared to an in-house development. So now, what should you pick at which point in your career? So if I were to sum it up in one sentence, I would say consulting for the experience, in-house for the quality and job satisfaction. So based on my experience, I would say if you're starting out, you're a recent grad or has less than 2 years of experience and hasn't had that consulting experience yet, I would say it's very much worth looking into a consulting company, because for all the factors we mentioned earlier, it can really level up your knowledge and game in that 1 or 2 years of a consulting period where you have the chances of getting burnt out because of how much projects and commitments you have. But you also learn a lot, which can put you in a very good place further along in your career, which makes you really valuable in the job market. You can literally apply to any companies and they would give you an interview because of how many different projects and clients you have collaborated with. And that's a valuable experience that you cannot really replicate outside in-house. So working for a consulting initially in your software engineering career, I would say is a win-win. So I hope you took away at least 1 or 2 things from my experience working as a software engineer at both in-house and a consulting company. And if you're new here on this channel, I share about my software engineering experience, tech reviews of the products that I use and love to use, and simply share my life here in Prague. And you might want to check out this travel vlogs I did when I was working as a software engineer for consulting companies and I was traveling to clients. Subscribe if you haven't already, and if you have been, thanks for watching.